Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. This episode is part of the implementation series with focus on guidance on implementing EU-funded projects. Communication and dissemination are obligatory in the majority of EU-funded projects, and hence most of you out there are familiar with the concept of communication and dissemination in both proposals and in the projects. The next 2 weeks I will zoom in on these two elements of project implementation together with two professionals that have a lot of experience with this. Czarny and Maëla Barçon are working for Hanse-Parlament in Hamburg. They are continuously involved in communication and dissemination activities in their project implementation. In this first half of this 2-episode, we dedicate the conversation to the communication activities. What are they? How do you carry them out? And what should you be aware of in your work with the communication? We talk about all the regular stuff, but also reflect on more creative ways to work. Please enjoy. The Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Now, today, we're going to have a guideline episode. It's another episode in the implementation series. And we're going to talk about communication and dissemination, which everybody that has been involved in a project or has been involved in a proposal preparation, they have had to deal with this. So many of you will be relating to what we're going to discuss today. So it will be a guideline episode to sort of have a fly, and I'm going to run through the classic activities and discuss how you can roll these things out. Now, I've already been saying way too much due to the fact that I have two guests in the virtual podcast studio, and Maëla and Anna, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Niels.
Pleasure to have you in, and you are regulars might recognize your voices. Anna, you've been here on a couple of times. You are you're almost becoming a regular.
I'm a regular, Niels. Thank you very much for having me, as we had a pleasure to talk about Win for SME's kickoff meeting and then follow up on a Train the Trainer. And today, indeed, and today I am here to hopefully provide some good insights on communication dissemination.
Yeah, and Maëla, we also had an episode recording together on another Erasmus project.
Yes. I'm still a rookie, but exactly, I've been here for the Erinvet podcast 1 month ago, I think.
Yeah,
and I'm very pleased to be back and to do this podcast with you. So same, just as Anna Maria said, I will try to do my best to provide some insights and share experiences also.
You'll both do fine, absolutely certain. And the reason why you're in here is because you are yourself in your professional work. You are dealing a lot, or have been dealing a lot, and are doing right now activities, communication responsibilities, and dissemination responsibilities. So I reached out to see if you wanted to do the authoritative The Grant episode on how to deal with implementation in relation to communication dissemination, and it didn't scare you. So let's short guest presentation. Maëla, you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Niels. So my name is Maëla Barçon. I'm a project manager at the Hanse-Parlament in Hamburg in Germany. Maybe a couple of words about the Hanse-Parlament. It's a non-profit structure network of more than 80 institutions, business chambers, universities, and vocational schools from 14 countries around the Baltic Sea region. And our main focus is to promote and support SMEs. And to this end, we are involved in several EU-funded projects, so being Erasmus+, Interreg, and certainly others.
Yeah, thanks. Anna, or Anna Maria, what do you prefer, Anna or Anna Maria?
We can go with Anna Maria today, please. Yes. Thanks.
Of course.
Anna Maria. Hello, everybody. So my name is Anna Maria Czarny. I'm a project manager, project coordinator for Hanse-Parlament as well. The Hanse-Parlament was already introduced. So what I just like to say is I work on a kind of vast array of projects when it comes to funding schemes. So we have Win for SMEs, for example, which is Erasmus Plus through the European Commission. We have Interreg Baltic Sea region projects, and also Erasmus Plus through the national agency. And I am indeed responsible for project management and communications dissemination, which is actually one of my favorite parts because it includes a lot of variety, or may include a lot of variety, which we will speak about today.
Which is leading us directly into the standard segment almost of the grant, the fly-in to today's topic. So I put it general remarks about communication dissemination, but this is the section in the proposals. If you zoom out and look at the 100,000 proposals being submitted to the Commission every year for their fund schemes, this is probably the section in the proposals that is copy-pasted the most. The copy-paste rate is very high on the input in the proposal, what you write, and put what kind of activities you put. Which, of course, we'll get back into that, what the activities are and how to deal with that. But can you open this up, just short fly-in also about a little bit about, we'll talk a little bit about definitions and the overlap in between them, because that's what many people struggle with. We're not talking about what you do when you write the proposal, because that's for the timeline series already been done. But what we're going to talk about here in this fly-in on definitions and overlap is when you do implement, to make sure what activity is what when you roll it out.
Yeah, sure.
Who want to pick that up?
Right. So, I mean, talking about communication and dissemination, we actually prepared as well for this podcast, because in most agreements, in most proposals, you of course have to have a section. As you say, Niels, it's a lot of the times, of course, copy-pasted. But what you'll see is that the sections are called... So, for example, I took a look into my Win for SMEs agreement. It's called Impact, Communication, Dissemination, and Visibility. So it's all together, right? And then in various setups, you'll have a mix of all of those words. So we were wondering how to start out with your listeners to kind of allow them to gauge the difference between the two. I myself can share a very nice definition of communication, and then I think maybe Maëla will follow up with dissemination. So communication is all activities that revolve around informing, promoting, and communicating activities and results throughout the project. So from the start until the end of the action. The target group here, it's directed to citizens, stakeholders, and the media. How to communicate, strategy, convey clear messaging, use the right channels to do so, which we will dive into in a moment. And the objectives are to engage with stakeholders, attract experts, raise awareness of how public money is spent, and show the success of European collaboration, transnational collaboration. So this is kind of like as an intro to what the, let's say, pure definition or basis definition of the communication aspect and communication activities is. We can unravel that a little bit later, maybe along the way. And Maëla, would you like to share the dissemination part, maybe?
Yes, of course. Just want to say also, maybe that's the case also for some of you listening, but for me, I think I started to use the word dissemination when I started to work in European project management.
Yes.
It's not a word I was using before.
A normal word.
Yeah.
It's an example of European vocabulary, you know.
And now I'm using it all the time. So that's why it's also nice, I think, to have this definition. So dissemination, it's much more focused in terms that we want to make the knowledge and the results publicly available, free of charge, of course, and as soon as they are ready. So it can be up to 4 years after the project. So you can see it's very different from communication in the sense that we don't talk about the activities, but we want to share the knowledge. So it's really about the content of the project. And how we want to do it. So usually it can be through publishing in scientific magazines, scientific or targeted conferences, databases, for example. And the objectives are to maximize the impact of the action, but also to allow other researchers to go a step forward and to contribute to the advancement of world-class knowledge. And again, make scientific results a common good. So it's really to share the results of the project. So I think it's, maybe we can sum it in this way, that communication, I think it's really throughout the project, and usually dissemination, it comes when you have the results, and that's usually at the end of the project, even though of course you can have some results after 1-2 years, but yeah, I think that's a first way to differentiate communication and dissemination.
The way I always remembered it for myself is that to distinguish this, because communication is not difficult to get the idea, right? Marketing on whatever social media platforms, reach out to media or whatever. Yeah. Dissemination, I've always said, okay, it's sharing the results and making sure that target groups, they, for instance, have training share, like you have a result and then you want that to spread within the whatever area socioeconomic area you're working with. So that's always how I remembered it. So that's about spreading it, the actual results as a praxis to do, so to say, change the way you do things according to what you have developed, and the communication is shining it.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think about dissemination, what's worth mentioning as well is the governance aspect. Any kind of legislative impact that the results may have or may incur. So this is also an element. So once again, it is an element with regard to certain activities. There will be an overlap, because if you go to an event with policymakers, governance related, you will also be shining the project, right? So having, of course, an element of communication. But I think hopefully we did a pretty good job on trying to differentiate the two.
Yeah, but this is also what confuses people that works with this, especially if you are new to it, if you're a junior or if you just entered the whole EU R&D world. It's what's the bloody difference? We make a workshop, we make an event, and that's communication, or that's a conference, or that's an event, that's communication. And then what's the then I disseminate what? Yes, it's an activity, that's a workshop here with but I also have a keynote speaker from the commission or someone communicating, so that it's obvious why you need to zoom out and sit down quietly, say, what's the bloody difference?
Yes. And I think you can't really have dissemination without communication, because if you publish something, your results, for example, you need to make sure people are aware that these results are available. Otherwise, nobody will have a look at it, because they don't even know it exists. They don't even know about the project. So for me, it's also a very important part that you need to have good communication to disseminate your results.
Yeah. A good example, Anna, that's actually both of you. A good example is the podcast that we've been recording for ANVED and for Win for SMEs, because podcasting, that's broadcasting, right? That's communication. But what we've been doing inside the recording, so is the content of the recordings, that's dissemination.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the activity itself afterwards, marketing it on LinkedIn, that's communication. With you guys sharing it, pushing it towards your network, and so look, listen, here's a podcast, excellent job, thanks, Nils, whatever. That's communication. But when people go in and listen to the content, then we are disseminating results and what we are doing.
Exactly, especially our second podcast, for example, when we spoke about the Train the Trainer, that is
a classic example.
Classic example, because we actually have a result, right? And the result is usable for our target groups. So that's a very good example indeed, yeah.
Nah, that's the fly-in. I think people get it. I get the idea now. So it's a good. We dressed you up out there for what we're going to run through now. So you get the idea. So so what? Sometimes I'm very transparent with my listeners. So here in this rundown, we made two distinguished blocks: communication activities and dissemination activities. But as you have just heard, it's quite difficult. So I'm going to let my dear guests, because they have prepared themselves quite well. So let's just start the conversation based on how you prepared yourself in relation to go through these things. So how would you, let's just start out. So what are the classic communication activities? What would you just start from there?
I think Maëla can go ahead, no?
Yes, maybe first an interesting point that I thought about thinking about this podcast is also how we organize ourselves within the project regarding communication and dissemination activities. Mm-hmm. And I realized that so I'm mainly going to talk about three projects, three LOEs, where Hanse-Parlament was lead partner, Erinvet, which was already mentioned in the podcast, and Povi Water, which is also a Center of Vocational Excellence project. And I realized, that, sorry, in the Erinvet project, for example, there is one partner responsible, but it's a small consortium, so all partners are involved, and we have regular meetings. So every 2 weeks, we have short meetings of 30 minutes, whereas...
Every 2 weeks?
Yes, every 2 weeks. That's why I thought it was quite interesting, because it's quite a lot. But at the same time, I think sometimes it's necessary. And that's also maybe a good point for everyone listening, is that there is no miracle recipe, I would say, regarding communication dissemination. It very much depends on the consortium, the project, of course, and how it's the dynamic, how it's working. For the Povi Water project, for example, we have one meeting per month, but we are following a bottom-up approach, which means that we have regional captains, so regional dissemination captains responsible for the dissemination and communication in their region.
You gave them a title.
Interesting as well. Sorry?
You gave them a maritime title.
Well, I did not, because we are not the lead partner. But they have this title to.
Okay.
Well, I think it's quite a nice title, to be honest. And
it's creative, anyways.
We didn't have it, so it's very different also from one project to another. But now going back to the classic communication activities, because that was a topic. Just wanted to mention that the organization is also different, and I think it's an interesting point. So, classic activities, I think, are posts on social media. You also mentioned it already, Niels, but I think it's very important. And then you have, of course, depending on the project and depending on what you have, different social media. So you can use LinkedIn. I would say is a very classic one. You can use Facebook. Maybe a funny point is that when I arrived at Hanse-Parlament, for me, I didn't think that Facebook was that useful, because I think it was old, if I allow myself to say it. And then we had this chat at Hanse-Parlament, and I realized that no, there are a lot of partners that are using Facebook, and that it's very important also to use it, because it's not the same public that we have on LinkedIn. And then, of course, we also have the new social media like Instagram, like TikTok. And I think depending on the project, it can be important. If I take, for example, Erinvet. So Erinvet, maybe just a couple of words about the project. It's applied research and innovation in vet centers. And our goal is to target, our goal was to target, because the project is now over, SMEs and vet centers. So of course, in this case, using Instagram and TikTok is not that relevant, because we don't directly target young people. But if I talk about the Povi Water project, which is a COVID project where we want to, attract young professionals also and vet students into the water sector, then it's very interesting to have Instagram and TikTok because, we want to reach the younger generation, and obviously they are using Instagram and TikTok. So it's very valid. And that's why also an Instagram account was created for this project. And I think it's very important in this case.
I think a comment sort of related to implementation part of it, of what you do here, is that, of course, you had these thoughts when you wrote the proposal, probably on which social media platforms you should be, but maybe in the rush of writing the proposal, you did not go in too much depth. But of course, it's an issue if you put some social media that you're not going to use. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say here is that you get much more time when you start to implement the project to say, okay, where are we going to fold things out? This is what Maëla is talking about here. That, okay, for this project, it's more important to be on this platform because that's where the target group is. And for another project, it could be not, like LinkedIn, whatever. It's so yeah.
Yeah, it's also something that we did in, for example, when for SMEs, in our proposal, we have a certain set of indicators, let's say, when it comes to communication, dissemination, and visibility, as stated before in the impact kind of subcategory. And based on this, within the first X amount of time of the project duration, we prepared a communication strategy document, which was sent around to all of our partners within the partner consortium. And there we, at that point of time, established what channels we have. I mean, these are channels that are set, but are not limited to, right? So at this point of time, for example, we have a LinkedIn profile for Win for SMEs, which I invite all of the listeners to check out, of course, a little bit of marketing.
I will link to it.
A link to it, yeah. We have a good couple of followers. That LinkedIn social media profile is linked up to the Community of Practice profile as well. So just to kind of show how the ball rolls, and the Community of Practice associates a multitude of centers of vocational excellence related projects. But where I'm going towards with the statement is that we have a certain set of details in the proposal, and then along the way, as Niels, you said, you can fine-tune them unless you have something extremely specific, of course, already in the proposal stated. But the fine-tuning comes along the way and is also based on something that Maëla says, target groups, right? So Facebook, is it old? It might be old for some, but it's not old for others, because it's all about which target groups you're going for, which generations you're going for. This is a big conversation right now, right? So I'm a millennial. Do I use TikTok? Not really. Do I use Instagram? Yes, I do. Do I use Facebook? Yes, I still do, because I'm an older millennial. But this is also something to keep in mind when you think about the strategy or the socials that you'll be using. There's, if you have a target group of, let's say, educational institutions or chambers, yeah, they're going to have a Facebook profile. I don't know, 75% of them. Will they have a LinkedIn profile? Not all chambers do, not yet. So you kind of have to gauge that as well along the way to fine-tune your strategy.
I think here, maybe you can say a few words about the strategy, dissemination communication strategy, because most projects you would have to do that when you start to implement the project, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, of course. So the communication and dissemination strategy that we prepared for Win for SMEs is like a basic document, let's say, with a couple of subcategories in it. And what we have is exactly what we mentioned right now before. So we have a specification of, first of all, the goals of the project, the results and target groups to which these results refer to, let's say. And then based on that, we also have a set of communication channels that we can use together with, if we're talking about social media, we're talking about, for example, a set of hashtags that we can use. If we're talking about meetings or events, then we have a one-pager, for example. This is also interweaving into maybe a bit more detail. A one-pager, a pitch that can be used just to make it easier. For the consortium to not have to think about this every single time they go to an event. It's a set of, for example, a QR code that takes you exactly to one of the results as a best practice. But what is important in a communication and dissemination strategy setup is also also going maybe a little bit too far, is indicators. So if you do have indicators, which you should have in my opinion, because as lead partner, I'm responsible for receiving dissemination communication reports and checking the indicators along the way, once per year, once per X amount of time, depending on the project. The indicators are there. So which project partner is responsible for which activities within the project framework? And this is a vast array of, social media is one thing. That's a little bit maybe non-specific, because I don't have an indicator saying that project partner number 4 needs to do 10 social media posts. But I do have indicators on news, press releases, for example, on presentations that include governance officials, on presentations at third-party events. And this is something that I think is the core of a strategy like this. This includes kind of like the softer elements as well. So for Win for SMEs, for example, we also developed a brand style guideline with, this is very specific, with colors, with what we need to remember about. And last but not least, also very important, visibility rules when it comes to any kind of activities with regard to European Union logos. That is big, and it always needs to be checked. Size, placement, size in relation to the project logo. This differs based on funding schemes. So that's in a nutshell about the communication strategy with regard to Win for SMEs. A quick note about communication strategies or activities in a different funding scheme, which might provide maybe a different insight for our listeners or for your listeners. When it comes to Interreg Baltic Sea region, they have a standard listed set of communication deliverables within core projects that need to be delivered. It doesn't change. This doesn't change. So these deliverables have to be done within a mid report and at the end report. And this is something that is included, of course, in the application just by default. It's a project summary, a story, a picture, audio, podcast, 2 quotes, for example, and a contribution to EU-wide event and campaign. So this kind of guides you when it comes to the communication strategy for these particular projects.
Now, thanks for this, Maëla.
Yes, I just wanted to say I completely agree with you, Anna Maria, that having indicators is very important. Also, as partner, I feel, because it's motivating in a way. Then also, I think it's a good way to involve all partners, because there is a risk, when you have one partner responsible for the communication dissemination work package, that the other partners may feel they are not really involved, or they don't have to be involved. And I think having these kind of indicators, it's a good way to show everyone, okay, look, we are all working in this work package and we need input from all partners. Otherwise, also you may lose some content because you don't even know always what's happening in Lithuania, for example. They might have talked about the project with another institution. And well, if they don't communicate about it, then as the partner, you won't know, so you won't communicate as well. And then the content information is lost. And that's a shame for the project. So I feel these indicators are very important. And yes, I think also this work package, everyone really has to be involved. Also because when you have, a lot of partners, they can communicate in their own language. And it's also very valid, because you know that if you communicate in your language, it will reach other people than if you communicate in English. So I think that's also an interesting thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think the strategy document is important from the sheer fact that it's a reference document for everybody. It sets down the rules, it sets down the frames, it sets down the guidelines for everybody to follow. And it's so it's sort of a Bible guideline, call it whatever you want. That's everybody's common baseline, common denominator. That's where you go to check how are we doing this, how is this supposed to be, how are we supposed to make posts on LinkedIn, how are we supposed to do this and that. So and what are the deadlines, what are the deliverables, who's doing what, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's important out there. So that's what you will all be doing, and many of you have already done this. And if you haven't done it before, now you know you have to.
I wanna just say something on top of this. This is maybe also a personality thing. I think my project consortiums sometimes might be sick of me talking about some kind of communication or dissemination ideas, but I like to, I like to try to get people excited about it. We're talking about, let's say, classic elements. So of course we can mention the websites and also to link up to what Maëla said, for example, for Win for SMEs, we're currently working on localized versions of the website or sub-versions, right, for every single center of vocational excellence, which means, okay, better reach, easier, it's going to be clickable, English or, Polish, for example, in whatever national language. So that's one element. But I always try to get the partner consortium excited with bigger or smaller success. It depends, of course, on taking part in communication activities, communication/dissemination activities, which, for example, require a little bit of creativity. So just to give you an example, we've applied, or I'd like to apply. I've already applied for the award we have a European Energy Sustainability Week in Brussels in June. And for my Easy Energy project, which is a core project from Interreg Baltic Sea region, I've applied for an award in a local energy contest, but I'd like to apply for a stall and I'd like to showcase our project. So in one of our latest meetings, I tried to get the project consortium excited about it and say, hey, I need interactive ways of trying to rein people into our stall. It's also an element of the application, because we can show a presentation, of course, and we can talk about bullet points and the deliverables, but how do we get people excited about it, And one of the ideas, for example, is because it's a certain subcategory of the solutions that we're looking at is insulation based. So can I bring a ball of insulation fluff and throw it to somebody and then engage them to come over and do a small quiz on easy energy solution basics, And then I share these kind of ideas, and then I ask for feedback. And right before this podcast, I got an awesome email from one of our project members with bullet pointed ideas on how we can engage, how we can get people to get interested in easy energy, if we, of course, receive a stall at this particular event. So, side note as well, try to get people excited about it.
Yeah. What I would like us to, because these are the first thing you think about when you think about communication. These are the first things you start to work on. But if this had been 10 years ago, the first thing you would have mentioned in relation to communication activities would be a website and a newsletter. Yeah?
True.
And the newsletters, they're still in there.
Yes.
They're still in the proposals. But even though everybody knows that nobody's reading them. So people have transferred them into LinkedIn. So you get your newsletters in your LinkedIn feed like this. I get tons because I have the grant. I get tons of newsletter requests that I have to tick. I tick them all, send them over. It's fine, I don't mind. It's the grant, I support everybody out there who's trying to reach out. Now, any words about this website and newsletters? Well, I know it's two things, but
yeah, when it comes to maybe I'll start out with newsletters. I think indeed a lot of we all get, I think, a multitude of newsletters nowadays, whether it's about events, everything, you have to sift through them, you have to filter out. You can open it, leave it, right? You get a bounce back information, for example, that somebody opened a newsletter or not. Why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this in relation to indicators as well. We can't really indicate whether somebody opened up a newsletter and engaged with it, whether they followed up on it, right? When you receive a newsletter like this, When and if it's transferred, these posts, to newer types of social media like LinkedIn, you can actually maybe have a better indicator of what's happening there because of the engagement statistics. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. We personally, as well as Hanse-Parlament, we do have a newsletter. We have, I think, a quarterly newsletter, or I think it's a quarterly newsletter that we have, and we still like to reach out to all of our members and the list that we have in our database to inform them about the ongoing projects, inform them about any kind of workshops that are going on. We do find this a pretty successful method, to be honest with you, but we do complement it with new ways, let's say, of communicating. So socials. When it comes to the website,
let's just pause it here, because
Sure.
so what I can tell you about newsletters, and a theory, but some background, because I'm a podcast, right? So before I started podcasting, I of course dug into how do I do this. And the thing is, when it comes to emails, so if you enlist to an email, emails are considered the most stable way to get people connected to what you're doing. Why is that? That's because people don't change. People stick to an email. People don't stick to their social media. People skip their profiles. People don't check their profiles. But people check their emails.
Mm-hmm.
So emails are per se, at least the podcast theory, so to say, outreach theory, is the most. Email lists are the most successful way if you want to build up a stable community of followers.
Mm-hmm.
They might not read it. I send it out. I see my stats.
Yeah.
I have it. I see my stats. Actually, sometimes the rating is quite high of opening rate.
Okay.
And sometimes, weirdly enough, I have very low clicking rate on my listen to link in there. But sometimes it's through the roof. It's like 50% clicking the link to listen to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's a weird, you can't, and there's no logic to what I would say that should be interesting.
Yeah.
And then nobody, and then something where I would say, okay, this is something where few would be, and then it's through the roof. So it doesn't, but it's just to say that do newsletters.
Yeah. Do newsletters.
Them.
And I feel it's also different because in a newsletter, you can write a lot of things. You have space. When you write on LinkedIn, people don't want to see a very, very long text. People are not going to read it. So I feel it's also a different use. LinkedIn is good to have short statement with a picture and to make people want to click on something and then maybe have more information. But on newsletter, you can really write many more things, and I think it's very important as well. For the Animate project, we also had a newsletter, and I think it worked quite well. People that are interested in the project and want to see how it's going, they are going to read the newsletter.
Yeah. A byline here is that remember out there, dear listeners, that I'm actually rolling a communication strategy series right now under my shorts format, and that is, we have episodes recorded 10 or 12 episodes. So I have released 2 batches, and more batches will come. So check in that, because there we go into a lot of these communication related issues that we're also talking about here, but that's focused on the communication. Website.
When it comes to websites, one comment that I have, which is because just to go back to newsletters for a second, do newsletters. Ideally, maybe complement them with socials. That will bring you an outcome for sure. When it comes to websites, classic, of course, website link ups, websites stated on various types of posters. What I would definitely do is QR your website wherever you can, because people nowadays, instead of typing something in, prefer just to QR it. It makes it way easier, and that definitely shortens, even though it's 1 or 2 steps less. That's what people are going for. It's easy, fast. For websites, there's also a way, we're actually looking into this right now, just to give you an example as well. For Win for SME's website, we have a lot of posts on LinkedIn, And we'd like to find a way to link up the posts from LinkedIn into our Win for SMEs website in order not to do double, one time here, one time here. So it's up to, of course, you, depending on what kind of organization you work for, and if you have a designated communications person and designer. For us, our designer and website person is actually looking into installing a plugin or an API that would possibly tunnel in all LinkedIn posts into our Win for SMEs website, which is something that would make life easy and efficient, right? Because we don't have to do double postings. But websites, definitely good for them to be interactive, good for them to be localized, good to have results listed, of course, easy to read. This is something that I would definitely mention. Maybe Maëla, you have something to add about websites.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, also easy to read, because I think it can be also very confusing if you have, many information, many content, and that in the end, nobody can really find what they are looking for because it's not well organized. And that's when people are going on the website, they have their first impression, and you want them to stay and to click on the different sections. So you want them to have a look at the partners, have a look at the activities, have a look at the results. So it's really need to be, I think, well organized. And yeah, I think website is very useful. And maybe just thinking about the QR code thing you were talking about. Well, of course, you can have flyers with QR codes, but we are trying now not to print so many papers. So a nice way to have the QR code is actually to have an object with a QR code that you can easily take with you, even traveling. For example, with 3LOE, we had this cube, with the logo of all partners and this QR code. So we were bringing the cube every time you had a 3LOE activity or a conference or anything, and then people could just, we're looking at the cube and we're quite curious about it. We're interested, and then they were going to see the website. So I think that's also nice to have this kind of objects that you can use and take with you no matter where you are going. And with Povey Water, we also wanted to do something similar, but we didn't make a cube. We chose a different approach in the sense that, in the Povey Water project, we have partners from South Africa, Stellenbosch University, and we had this meeting in Stellenbosch in November 2024. And we thought about it, and we are going to South Africa. It's, it's something. And so we decided to have these rugby balls that we could use for each region. Have a rugby ball that they can throw at people and, make them talk about the project. So that's what we did. And yeah, I think it's, it's still new, but I think it's going to be successful. And it's also a nice way for partners. They have an object they can use every time they are communicating or disseminating the project. And yeah, I think it's good to have some objects or some things that, just make everything dynamic in a way.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the website, look, don't copy paste your text from your proposal and and put it onto the website. Please don't. Nobody's going to read it. It's just going to be a waste of resources from your side, from the project side, from the commission side. Don't,
no, please.
Do the effort now, especially now where you have the chat bots. You use ChatGPT to spice it up, sex it up, whatever, to make nice texts about what you're doing. It has become more and more easy to make content nice. Also, you have even AI things that can generate a nice website for you. Just fill in your photos and then it makes it for you. Do use these tools if you're not an expert, because if you are an expert, use all your capacities to make this nice.
Yeah.
Because it's a one-off. Yeah, it's a one-off. You set up the website. I know it's it can take it takes some resources to build a nice website. But when it's done. You have the template. You just need to update it and so on with the input. So just make an effort to make it nice, please.
Yes. On this note, I wanted to share because you say don't copy and paste. I mean, if you copy and paste, then you're going to have a lot of jargon. That's definitely not, necessarily attractive to anybody that wants to take a look at what you're doing. I wanted to mention something that was shared with me. This is, once again, I'm going back to the Interreg BSR, Baltic Sea region funding. They have a specific meetup for communications once per, I think, month roundabout. It's called a Comms Coffee. It's fantastic, to be honest with you. It's just kind of like a light way to have a coffee with all the projects and talk about comms activities, inspiration, options, contests, any kind of events that are coming up. And they came up with a storytelling technique that I very, very much like. And I wanted to share a couple of points from it with you. It's basically an elevator pitch, right? And this is also something that you can do, I feel, with your project consortium. I've actually done that in one of my workshops, an easy energy workshop. One of the activities was to just create an elevator pitch for the project. And that, first of all, that gives you an overview or a lot of options. Let's say you have 5 groups, you have 5 elevator pitches, but it also allows you to gauge where we are with the understanding of the full process, of the full project, and then you can see with time how that develops, the deeper you go and the further along you are, because these projects are complex sometimes, right? So what they have in this, so this is from Interreg BSR, what they have is 2 sentences about context, a specific problem, the idea for the solution, how it works too, if you want it, proof, and your vision and impact. And if it's a set of slides. I can also share this with you if you'd like, Niels. And it's with a couple of, there's loads, of course, on this when it comes to storytelling. But we all know, I'm pretty sure everybody has read about this, that it's the stories that attract attention, right? If you're a skilled storyteller, you've got it all. So you can also try to transfer the storytelling technique to create a very easy pitch, and then based on that, for example, create a 1-pager, which you can share with your partner consortium.
Yeah.
And then they can add on based on their national, for example, if it's a national COVE, Center of Vocational Excellence, additional things. So this is something I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
If I may, just made me think about something else that came out for Sri Lanka at the end of the project. You may also have some communication dissemination experts within your consortium. And we had this very nice partner from Austria, IAGF, so the Institut für angewandte Gewerbeforschung in Vienna. And they were responsible for the communication dissemination in Sri Lanka. And well, they have a lot of knowledge in this field, and they offered kindly to make this training for all partners to learn them how to do a Canva video. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also very important and a very nice point, because for us it happened at the end of the project. So now partners know how to do those videos, but for the project it's too late in a way. Yeah. And it might be worth, asking your partner also at the beginning of the project, okay, is one of you an expert in this field, or do you have something you'd like to share with the partners? Because it can be very valuable. And then everyone can make its own video and contribute again to the communication dissemination of the project. So that's also something, to keep in mind, just to find the experts among the consortium and share again the knowledge with the rest of the group.
Sharing is caring. Don't keep it to yourself. Thanks. Now, what we also need to talk a little bit about is your logo design, brands, and so on, because that's definitely related to communication. Yeah? A logo for the project, there's some design elements, layout elements in relation to your how you brand the project, so the logos you have on documents you send out and stuff like this. So that's a short thing. It's just something you need to. You need to do.
Yeah, you need to do it. It's very, I guess you can say that it is strictly regulated. So there are clear guidelines when it comes to this. I think as lead partner, it's best to create a one-pager, inform the partner consortium. Some funding schemes, for example, Interreg BSR, they have created a one-pager with showing examples of dimensions. It's important. It's up to lead partner as well to control this, monitor this, to take a look at how it's going, because it's not great at the end or in the middle of a project where it turns out that, I don't know, printed out posters or something like this have a different setup than they should have. So definitely the right logos, the right dimensions, the right color schemes. This is not super complicated, but it's something that should be taken into consideration for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Yeah, I think it's always mentioned in the grant agreement for the project I'm part of. It's Article 17 most of the time, but it's very important to know it, and as Anna Maria said, also to tell the partners about it, because you want to avoid also this situation. And they will definitely see if a logo is missing or if it's not as it should be. So I remember we had this situation once for the INVET project. We had a presentation and everything was right. But when the screen was shared, it was shared by another institution. I think one of the logo was cut in half or something like this. And the project officer directly saw it and saw that the logo was not on the slide. And then she wrote an email saying, well, there was not the logo was missing. Fortunately, we could show the correct PowerPoint and show that, yes, the logo was there, everything was fine, but they directly noticed something was missing. So
this is where,
you
know what? I know that I have that commission people are listening to my podcast. You know what? It's okay. It's your job. But sometimes you're not supposed to say anything now because I'm the I'm the independent guy. We like you so much, dear commission. It's you do a fantastic job. It's whatever you do for us, it's fantastic. But sometimes it gets a little bit nitty gritty. It's not on purpose. Don't take away our money just because we miss a logo on the presentation. I'm just the work that I just stepped out of right now. We are also in the EU Social Fund project and extremely meticulous on checking social media posts and presentations and so on with the logos. Yes, we know you paid for the show. We know it's but sometimes these things were I guess you're not going to change the practice because I say maybe calm down, but just we all do the best we can. No, that said, I think we cover. Now I was just checking through. Two things left: press and media outreach and conferences, events. So this press and media, I've been writing so many proposals where you would say, we are reaching out to local media, reaching out to local TV stations, stuff like this. What do you have to say around this press and media relationship?
It's difficult. I would say.
It is.
From my experience, it's difficult because it's if you want to publish in scientific magazines, for example, usually it's not possible because they are very, very scientific. And sometimes the subject, also the topic of the project, is so specific that they are not really interested in it, also in, I would say, the general press. So that's something for me that is quite difficult. At the same time, it's, sometimes it's written also in the grant agreements that you have to do it. That's the case for the INVET project. And, we struggle to publish an article in a local press in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
It's still running, so we hope it will take place, but it has been very difficult. And I know it was not only the case for Germany, but for other countries as well.
It's very tricky.
Yes.
That's actually what we talk about. We just, the last batch, the 3 episodes Casper and I did in our communication short series, we tackled this. How to engage with journalists, how to reach out to them and so on, how to because this is, and you don't have the time to do it because you do something else. Yeah, you do something in relation to the project. So doing this kind of, unless you're an actual press responsibility in your organization that has the time and how to, have the time and resources to do this kind of footwork, it's also a matter of how much do you get back from it. Yeah, what's the actual for all the efforts, and then you might end up that they write some short article. They might show up for a workshop or something, or an event where they write a short article that might be slashed the day before deadline because of something else. It's a balance here. You could do the work and try to push it, but try to maybe focus on media, specialized media. Especially if you're doing a technology project within agriculture. Approach local agricultural media where they like to have a local success story about how a local company is doing now sustainable wheat removal from the fields, stuff like this. Instead, don't even, sound is very difficult. Radio, even local radio. Try to find out where you get most buck for your resources with this kind of outreach. No?
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, it's like a hit and miss sometimes. But what you just mentioned about focusing your efforts on areas where you know the target groups of your projects are associated with, I think that's definitely a good hint. On LinkedIn, for example, you can also maybe try to look up, there's various types of forum boards and groups which are really super specific, and you have people from various areas involved in those kind of groups. You have, of course, people working on projects, people working in certain institutions, but you also have media representatives. That might be a way of trying to establish contacts. But it's as you say, it's kind of like a hit and miss. It's a hit and miss. It's going to events and also trying to network and establish these kind of contacts. High level events are always maybe more of a hit than a miss. Because
but then it's a different world. I always say that it's a parallel world. So for what we would think would be a high level person, right? In the real world, who's that? Unless you get van der Leyen, and you're not, then it's or commissioner, because you're not. Unless you have really in a project that is really high profile, where the commissioner, that's not what you're gonna. So yeah, I think we all three agree here on how balance your efforts on this part and focus on other parts we've been discussing here because you're gonna get much more outreach and effort, and get results from people checking and reading it and so on.
Yeah. So what I think here is an element of, I guess, variety, you could say, is, and I'm a big fan of this, is contests. Really, contests, awards, places where if you win, or if you're within a finalist group, you can really get your point across, and you can get a certain amount of media coverage. So to give you an example of this, so as I mentioned before, I applied for an Easy Energy. I'm a big fan of this, so you'll be hearing about this from me. We applied for a photo contest with BSR Prosper, which is a project that focuses on creating employment pathways for newcomers. Didn't win it, but still, it was definitely something that could give us a lot of visibility, and I actually listed the visibility here. If we had won, we would be promoted among the European Commission. We would get a promotion boost across the program's social media portal and other communication channels. We would be featured in the Interreg program's Europe Day campaign. So these are the kind of things, where you want to kind of give it a go. We have another event. This one was successful, so that one wasn't successful. But with the same project, BSR Prosper, we applied for a slam competition. I think I mentioned this to you, Niels, very briefly when we were together in Lithuania. And the final event, because we applied with a project story for BSR Prosper, according to exactly that concept that I mentioned before, the storytelling concept. We were selected as one of the six finalists, and now we're going to Slovenia for an Interreg Go conference. It's going to revolve around the results of consultations and programs on post-2027 Interreg. It's in Nova Gorica in Slovenia, and there will be, I think it's going to be a high-level event. The program is available. We'll have, the Vice President for Cohesion and Reforms there from the European Commission, for example, as a person that's taking part in the high-level opening. And this is something that I like to push to in various projects. But of course, once again, effort, gauging the amount of effort you put into it with the results that may come out of it. But I am a big fan of these kind of things, and I think that they do provide visibility and options to get media coverage.
Sure.
Yeah, I think in the end also, the more you communicate, the more you will have opportunities. So I think that's also, that's that kind of a game as well. If you want to have opportunities, you want to have people to know you, and that's the thing. So you should communicate a lot, and then the more you communicate, the more you will have opportunities. You will be invited to conferences, you will be invited to other events, you will be visible. So it's...
Now, that's a nice bridge to the last bit here now, because I need to have a look and keep an eye on time, because we need to have move into dissemination shortly. But just the last element that everybody is dealing with in projects on the communication side, that's events, conferences. Yeah. It's an important part, not only the kickoff and shutdown conference, but the events that you do in between. So one thing, if you just stay away from the workshops, because that's clearly dissemination related, but if you have any kind of public events, can be of any sort, that's a clear communication activity. Mm-hmm. If it's an open event, where you invite external speakers of any sort of interest, so to say, within the area.
I think conferences are really important to disseminate the results. But from my experience also, if I'm referring to the 3LOE project, you have these conferences in a different country, and not everyone can come, of course. And you put a lot of efforts, time, resources, but you are missing out a lot of people. Because if it's not also available online, then you will have the people in the room, having access to the results in a different support, in a different format than, the results written. And what we did in the 3LOE project is that we recorded the conference, then we made those short videos, result videos, where we present the results, but in 10 minutes. And I think it's very important because we know that people don't have a lot of time. So they won't, have a look at the results, which has 300 pages. So having these kind of short videos where you present the most important results in 10 minutes, it's very good because people have a first impression and can decide, okay, it's very interesting and relevant for me, so I will have a look at the big reports and read everything. Or they can just say, okay, well, no, I know what the project is about, I know what I need to know, and it's good. So that's an advice also I would give, is to, try to make these results also in a short version, in a different format that keep people, that people want to have a look at it.
This is a very good point, actually, because I forgot that the chat didn't throw in the online. So of course, online events, distinction between in-person events, conferences, and webinars, online conferences. So of course, think them into the flow, because the point that you made here, Maëla, is obvious that there's limit to how many people that can come to a conference, and there's also a limit to exactly this: time, travel, expenses, so on and so forth, what people will pay to come to Brussels or Barcelona, wherever you're having it. So naturally, but they're important. From the communication perspective, so to say, it's important with public events here and there. It's important because it makes, for the communication part, look, this big event, look what we're doing, and for the dissemination part, which is, it's again the distinction, that's the podcast, the event as a concept, it's a communication thing, but what is inside of it is dissemination. So there, for the communication part, the offline in-person thing is very important, because you can do many things there that people love. That was a nice event, or the nice food, but for the dissemination part, it's much more important to have an outreach. If you can if you can combine the two, having it offline, so to say, having it in person, and then you have from there, you can access maybe the content through a webinar. You can have links to the different sessions that you have the content for dissemination. These kind of things, you play with it, work with it.
I have a perfect example of this, I think, right now that comes to my mind. This is in relation to our Win for SMEs project. We just had a meeting, I think it was about a week ago, with EUWIN, so the European Workplace Innovation Network, and in connection to Bridges 5.0. So this is a Horizon project which focuses on building better outcomes for businesses. This all revolves around workplace innovation. And we signed a letter of intent. We're collaborating. It's fantastic because they, as in the European Workplace Innovation Network, will be organizing a live event in Brussels in June. We'd like to be present with our Win for SMEs project. The details are being ironed out. Maybe it's a bit too early to speak about it, but we want to go, of course. But what they have simultaneously is they have a fantastic online platform called Fresh Thinking Labs, where it's more of the dissemination part that you mentioned. So it's a platform with best practices, with listed webinars, with networking opportunities from the target groups that you want to disseminate to. So it's a perfect example of how you can meet live, of course, to communicate, network, but then that's also like kind of interwoven with this online aspect of a knowledge-based platform, of a way to share your results and to establish networks in order to, for example, even rein more partners in, which in our case would be for the centers of vocational excellence.
Just thought of another thing before we step into dissemination. It's a little bit on the same side as on the social media and the website, blogs and vlogs. Is that anything that you've been playing with, like doing in the projects you've been in, to make blogs, like writing content or video vlogs? Is that something?
This is something that I'm looking into slowly. So we'd like to see if there's an option for us to create a blog area within Win for SMEs. I think that would be something that would be interesting and a good way to allow also the partners to contribute. This is kind of on the back burner for now. First, we're going to localize and set those elements up. I don't have too many experiences with vlogging. I know that Maëla just created a video for one of her POVI projects, so maybe she can add something here.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And I think it's actually quite nice you are mentioning it, because we talked a lot about the work package of communication dissemination, but sometimes there are other work packages that are directly also relying on this work package. So to give you an example, for example, and then I'm going to talk about the video. It's related. For the POVI water project, we have work package 2. So we need to add new partners to the COVIs every year, 2 per COVI, and then we need to create a new water COVI. So that's also something, you need to communicate about the project, because you need to gain new partners. So you need to talk about it. So that's my first point. And well, now we are in the process, of signing cooperation with French partners that we met in the COVI Forum in Lyon. So that's also very interesting to mention. And we also have in this project work package 6, where we are the work package coordinator, Hanse-Parlament, and we have to create these impact stories. And that's kind of something we have been doing, that now, we have this impact, and we want people that took part in project activities to share their experience, to say, okay, so you did this project activity, you did this hackathon, for example, you went to South Africa, you went to the Netherlands. What did it bring you? Mm-hmm. And so I'm currently creating this video. So I just finished the one about South Africa. And we want with this video to engage people, to show them, okay, this is what we are doing. And this is what people are learning, from these activities. So yeah, I think these kind of videos are also quite nice to make, especially in this project, because the partners are doing a lot of activities, a lot of different activities in the different countries. And I think it's a nice way also to show people that these activities are very valuable, and they should join this activity.
Sound and video. Now I'm a podcaster, so I have to say this. Sound and video are very strong facilitators. Yeah, it's something that text is more difficult to work with if you want to get attention or attract people to. Oh, what's that? It's strong. It's just strong channels to use. And actually, in related to this is visuals. Like either graphic videos or clip videos together. Make short videos for your social media platforms to promote. Or especially at my old work, we started to do recording videos on site at events, and then we had a communication guys clipping things together, editing it. Like making short videos, 30 seconds, with short interviews with participants combined with atmosphere videos from what was happening and so on, and maybe some music, as underground, also underlying. You say make things a little bit nice, because this is something that facilitates your message. People say, "Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's nice. They made students do a hackathon. Oh, that's interesting."
Yes, it's very nice. And I think in this case, also in this project, having this kind of bottom-up approach is also very important, because, as I said, we and the other partners are doing a lot of activities, but of course, the partner responsible for communication and dissemination is not going to these activities, not all the time. No. So you need to have also this regional captain, making this kind of content, the videos you're talking about, 30-second videos. Okay, what did you do? What did you learn? How did you like it? And in this sense, having also this approach, I think it's very, very good. I must say, in this project, the communication dissemination team is really good, and there is a lot of content. So you can also check out on the website. I think it's worth it.
I have to also maybe wrap it up with talking about visuals and sound. I mean, there's so many applications nowadays, right now, free of use, that obviously it's not that some of them have a steeper learning curve and some of them are very easy to use. I'm sure, Niels, this. I'm experimenting with this, but in I don't know, 5 years ago maybe, or 7 years ago, if you wanted to have a really nice infographic with statistics, you'd need to have a designer maybe to do it for you.
Shitloads of expensive,
just loads. Yeah, exactly. But nowadays you go to, I don't know, the app infographic.
I use Canva.
Canva is a perfect example, just absolutely perfect example. But you also have, Canva is actually a perfect example. It's all in one. You can do everything in there. Yeah. You have infography.in. You have napkin.ai, something that is now in beta version. It's totally free. It's really nice. You can put in a summarized text, and it kind of comes up with a nice little small graphic, which you can then copy and use in a bigger infographic. I just created a full blueprint based on this. It does require a little bit of time, and you need to be maybe a little bit more well-versed, but it's not a very steep learning curve. So I think that with all the options that we have today, you can really give it a try, to try to make these elements a bit more attractive, a bit more appealing through video, audio elements.
look, if any listener here are connected with me on LinkedIn, and at least on my the ones that are on my mailing list are connected with me on LinkedIn, and you know how my infographics they look, so to say, my marketing every Monday on LinkedIn, and that's done in Canva. And if you've been following me for a while, you might have noticed how they change. That's because of my own capacities changing, of course, making things nicer and so on. That goes for the same for you guys. If you need to do this, go in, start to play around with it. You might be frustrated in the beginning or understanding how it works, but it's going to work out again. And you can. I always recommend if you don't know, if you're struggling, ask ChatGPT how to do this in Canva. It's going to give you a nice guideline.
I think it's fun also to make the content. At least that's how I feel about the video. It's nice also
because you're a communication professional, Maëla.
No, I'm not a designer. But no, I think it's fun, and it's also it's nice because you can really promote what you're doing with the partners, and it's fun. I promise you, it's fun.
Now, on that note, we move into dissemination. Now, a lot of it, as we've been, the basic premise, so to say, baseline for this episode is that we go back and forth between, but now we've been sort of going through the obvious communication parts. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find a link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Anna's and Maëla's personal LinkedIn sites and a link to Hanse-Parlament's website. Further, there is a link to the Win for SME's LinkedIn profile referred to in the episode. There's a link to some information from the EU Commission related to this, and of course a link to the rest of the episodes in the implementation series. Finally, there's also a link to my communication short series with complimentary input for anyone working with communication within EU R&D funding. Next week, the second half of this episode is up with focus on the dissemination part. You can look forward to that.